Thank you so much for joining me on She's All Over the Place. I am so excited to have you here. Talking about legacy, we have a good one today. Star Trek. Have you heard of it? I'm sure we have a lot of fans out there. So, I met Eugene Roddenberry Jr. at the United Nations on 11/11 on my birthday. How epic. And he was a speaker there, and I just had to run up to him and be connected, and his energy was magnetic. And I'm like, yo, I got to know you. And so we've been like in communication ever since. And I am so grateful, Eugene, that you're with me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic.
I agree. Thank you so much for being here. I was just doing a bunch of research and I really love all the things that you're doing and just learning about the legacy. Let's just jump right in and let's talk about, the philosophy of Star Trek. Let's start there.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, I have a very, and obviously a very personal relationship with Star Trek. And I can't say no one sees it the way I do, but I have to say that my view of it is very, well, obviously personal, but critical. And, I don't look at Star Trek as a TV show. I really do look at it as a roadmap to the future. And not just a roadmap as to what the future could look like, but who we could be, our potential, who we could be as humans in that future. And, for those who don't know much about Star Trek, which I'm sure there's plenty of you that are watching this, it's got a very positive message. It really talks about a future where we no longer fear our difference and change. In fact, we've learned at that point in the future that it is the differences in life and certainly between us, and not just in our physical forms, but more importantly, our ideas that make life worth living. To expand our knowledge, to expand our intellect, is sort of the focus of life. Is sort of the statement Star Trek makes. Star Trek has an acronym called IDIC, IDIC, which stands for Infinite Diversity from Infinite Combinations. And all that, the only thing that means is pretty much what I just said. Everything unique and different in this world, whether form or idea, is something of value and something to be treasured, looked at, and embraced. And so, in that Star Trek future, the crew on the Enterprise, the crew on all these ships, the crews in Starfleet that are traveling our galaxy are not looking for weird looking aliens. They're looking for life forms in our galaxy that look at the universe in a different way, because we've learned at that point that by meeting these and interacting and hearing how they look at the universe, will allow us to add to our knowledge and expand our own way of thinking. Even if we don't agree, even if they're not as advanced as we are, they will have a perspective that is unique, and that perspective is something to value, consider, and learn from. And Star Trek is a TV show. It is entertaining. It should be entertaining. I don't mean to make it so like beating you over the head with messages, but that is sort of the backbone of it. And in my opinion, if Star Trek isn't making you think a little, if it isn't proposing a unique circumstance, or something that you've never considered before, something that just makes you look at something slightly differently, then it's not good Star Trek. And so, in a nutshell, to answer your question, that is Star Trek to me.
I love it. And it's just it's what everyone in my stratosphere and my great leaders and teachers along the way, humanity, diversity, the messages, being a part of the ripple effect and being positive and living your dreams and creating space for that to happen, right? So maybe we
Mhm.
can get into some of the people who have these ideas, or they hear these things, or they're new to hearing these things, but what are some actual steps to maybe live by this philosophy, because it's a practice, you know?
You, absolutely. And while I'm on my soapbox here telling you how great Star Trek is and showing the potential of future, by no means am I an expert at any of these things. You know, there's many things, and one of them is self-reflection and forgiveness. And what I mean by that is, we are human. We lose our tempers. We make mistakes. We react instead of act sometimes, and that's okay. It's okay to do that when it happens. But if you can catch yourself in the perfect world before it happens, but if you can catch yourself along the way, reflect on what just happened and sort of analyze it and say, listen, I made a mistake, and actually sort of acknowledge whatever the situation was. If you were rude to someone, say, listen, I'm really sorry. I was stressed out. I reacted. I didn't act. And it just kind of bothered me, whatever the situation was. And just sort of have that transparency and that openness and that ability to communicate your feelings. And not only that, be able to receive the feelings of others. I took my son to when he was young. I took my son to a school interview, and in the second grade classroom, they had this great thing. They had kids divided up. They had 8 kids in there. One got up in front of the other 8 and said, I don't like it when people make fun of my glasses. And the teacher said, that's very good. Who else feels that way? And the kids raised their hand. One kid raised their hand, said, very good, sit down. Another kid got up and then expressed what their thing was. And at that moment, it seemed very simple. But upon reflection, I realized at this young age, they were learning how to communicate feelings. And, I don't want to say just men, but, a lot of men and women on this planet, we are not good at doing that. And not only are we not good at clearly communicating our feelings without aggression or hostility, we are also not very good at receiving when people express their feelings. Sometimes we take it as an attack. Hey, Rod, I didn't like it when you said that to me. You've got to be able to not lash out upon that. So anyhow, it truly is bettering yourself. But again, forgiving yourself, because we're far from perfect. We make a lot of mistakes, and then it's okay to make that mistake and acknowledge it. And so how do we get there? I mean, there are many steps. I think that is certainly one thing that we can all work on. And again, myself included. But I think that's an important one. I think communicating our feelings to each other, as hippy dippy as some of you might think that is, I really think it's key to having better communication among our species.
Yeah, I love everything you said, and some things that come to mind is, the hardship when we're reacting and we're not communicating, we can't let that golden guard down. You feel the intense energy, it builds up, it's toxic, it's so hard, and we
Hmm.
want to communicate, but the vulnerability of sharing, of the second grader standing up and saying, I don't like when people are making fun of my glasses. It's like you're breaking that pattern. You're breaking the pattern. And Jim Quick, he was with us at the
Yeah,
United Nations. I love Jim Quick, and
yeah,
he was saying we're a student, and when we're a student we get to learn. So maybe when the second grader stood up and said that thing about his glasses, and then everyone else participated, they were students. But then he says, when you teach, like as we're doing right now, we're communicating what we've learned collectively, and when we teach, we get to learn twice. So that
yeah,
builds on that positivity, and the instead of reacting, responding in a healthier communicative way with this energy, with this psychological philosophical energy that we feel, and then we sometimes can't communicate. So it
yeah,
really
yeah.
breaks down that energy of old transcripts and old things that we learned along the way.
Exactly. And that fear stays with you. The fear, if you don't have these communication skills, you have that leftover fear of, I don't know how this person is going to respond to me expressing myself. Because when I've done it in the past, someone's yelled at me or been upset. So and that fear, listen, it's cyclical. And the more fear you have, the less you do, you take action and kind of try to remedy situations. Anyhow, I think we all, for the most part, know this in our hearts, and know there are ways to get through it, but it takes some bravery and it takes some commitment. And I can say it to you right now, and I can say it to everyone listening when the time comes. I try to do it, but I'm not always the best at it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And something I was just researching, because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm curating this project. But the number one was 1917. So 1918 World War One ended on 11/11, my birthday, when we met. And I was looking at the Gemini AI, and I was asking the trajectory of what mental health was then. And they didn't know too much. They knew PTSD and the things that they tried that actually made things worse. But the second thing that they brought up was the stigma the stigma that a lot of the men didn't even correlate to the women because of the soldiers during the time, but there was a stigma of men being weak. Brene Brown talks about vulnerability. So they were ashamed and blamed, and they felt weak and cowardly. And then you fast forward to 2024, and you mention just that there, of not being able to communicate in such a way. And it's empowering to be able to communicate our feelings and to share. But still in 2024, a lot of people feel shamed and blamed and cowardly to be able to speak up. So having those healthy communications is really important. And it's so neat because with storytelling, and what your dad started at such a young age, and playing and being connected to these aliens, and a lot of people in the world. I mean, there's a whole people who follow the aliens. My godmother, she's very much into it. And so many people are. My friend has a book called Contact, and 11 people who are specialists, like who worked at the government, and they talk about it all. The book's called Contact by Alan Steinfeld. um
Oh, okay. Different
yeah,
contact.
it's called Contact, yeah. And
Yeah.
he was on the podcast too. But whatever that is, when you're intuitive hit and you're creating in your play world, and we have these storytellings and whatever collective information we have during that time, and it's a vision, it's a fantasy, and so you move it into today, and we're talking about movies and TV shows and animation, and we're storytellers. Like when you're a producer, as you are a TV producer, and we have podcasts that are really popular, and we get to share stories through films and TV and animation and everything we're talking about right now. We get to take these things that we've collectively learned, that was the old scripts, and where we want, like you said earlier, of where our future is going, where we want it to go, and we get to put it in entertainment and entertain the rest of the world. Like, we're so brave, and we get to do what we do as entertainers, but we get to put them in these beautiful stories.
Yes, no, absolutely. And not every story has to do this, but again, one other thing that Star Trek does so well is it does inspire people. The reason I love Star Trek is not because my father created it. It's because for most of my life, people have come up to me and shared stories of how Star Trek inspired them. And it could be simple things from it inspired me to simply want to believe in myself and become a better person, to people that are in horrible, perhaps abusive relationships, whatever the case may be, and it giving them hope and a reason to continue on and get out of that situation, or people with severe disabilities, giving them a hope that if there's not a cure for what they have, they won't be considered outcasts in society in the future. And again, countless stories I've had that are truly like unbelievable. I grew up watching Knight Rider and Starsky and Hutch, and these I will argue more one-dimensional shows with a good guy and a bad guy. I When I saw Star Trek and started hearing about these things, I had no idea. But the first episode that I saw that really clicked for me was an episode called "The Devil in the Dark." It's an original series episode, and it, not to give too much away, but there's a planet. The humans are there for some reason. In the future, we're still mining minerals and ores and these sorts of things, and but people keep dying because there's this monster underground that's tunneling through, killing the miners. And so humans, or they call the Enterprise in, not to give too much away, and Enterprise comes in, and at first they try to kill it, but then Spock says, you know what, it seems to be an intelligent life form, let's communicate with it. So they end up communicating with it, and they find out it's a mother protecting its young, and its eggs are the crystals we've been mining. So we are the humans killing its children unknowingly, and it's simply there to defend its eggs. And so that was a time that I kind of realized television can have an impact. There can be a message, there can be a very powerful message. And that message right there, speaking of communication, was about communicating first. You don't have to kill right away because there's another point of view that you may not understand. And that rock monster was not trying to intentionally harm humans, it was protecting its children.
Mm.
And so that is a very powerful message. And I always get chills every time I tell that story. I get chills because it resonates so deeply, and it's so relevant then, and it's incredibly relevant today.
Hmm.
Um, So the power of television and the power of Star Trek can be very transformative. And
Yeah.
so that's why it's a very personal thing to me. If
Mm.
my father were creating just some sort of sci-fi show and I was working on a sci-fi show, I probably wouldn't care too much about it. I'd get my paycheck, I'd have a good time doing it, I'd make sure it's quality to the best of my ability, but I'd be focused on, hopefully making the world a better place in other ways.
Thank you for sharing that intimate story. It's one of the exact things I wanted on the show. Is I like to get to the root and to the heart and the core because understanding the why, right? Understanding the
Hmm.
why, and it has to be sustainable to follow through for your purpose, your intention, and your legacy, and when you're sharing with others, and then when you're able to receive. I mean, your heart must just be so big to be able to receive all that love. Like, I mean, people just want so much love, and you get it, but also you get to probably be like under the radar at some point, right? Like,
I I do have the best of both worlds. I'm not in front of the camera. I'm not a celebrity in the sense that people really know what I look like or care. But the last name is somewhat known in the sci-fi community. It's not known by everyone. So to your point, yeah, it's the best of both worlds because every now and then my name, and I don't really try to leverage it that much, but every now and then my name can work certain benefits for me. And also I can walk around on the street and not be mugged by people, or have tons of people come up to me because no one knows what I look like. So I'm very fortunate in that way.
yeah. Also, I want to honor you because, I've had a lot of friends along the way where, they've had an opportunity to be a part of franchises and legacies within the family, and then they rebel and they don't want to be a part of it. And then, like, some are shamed and blamed, and,
I started
you
off
were,
that way though.
oh, really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't want to live in my father's shadow. My father is the one nickname for him is the great bird of the galaxy. And I did go to conventions at a young age, and I was certainly impressed with conventions because people were in costume and it was just sort of a fun thing. But of course, everyone praised my father, and it wasn't until I did a documentary in 2000. Well, it started long before 2011, but it came out around 2011 called Trek Nation. It took about 10 years to make, and most of that was because I really had no idea what I was doing. And everyone that I was working with, we were working well together, but we'd go in different directions and realize that's too far this way, that's too far this way. So it was an incredible learning journey to do the documentary. But what was more of a journey for me were I was talking to fans, I was talking to leaders in the industry, I was talking to people that knew my father, and I was just learning all about him and learning about the great bird of the galaxy, this man on the pedestal, and learning about the good and the bad was very important because it humanized him.
Mm.
It brought him down to a level that I could not only identify with and connect with, but I could actually love. He was human. And I know that sounds crazy because he was my father and I did love him. But this was after he had passed away. And this was sort of a way outside in to reconnect with him and see him through a new light. And I was able to love Gene Roddenberry, my father, the man, all over again. And so
Aw.
that was an incredibly powerful experience. And it made me very proud of not just who he was, but who I am. And I've chosen to carry this on in my own way because I connect with Star Trek. I connect with the messaging. I'm not doing it out of any sort of obligation to my father, no obligations to the fans. I am so proud to have the last name I have and do what I can to continue the Star Trek messaging. And that's a double-edged sword, by the way. I am not the single one running everything Star Trek. That is not me. Nor do I want it to be me. Nor do I think it should be me. Um, but when other people are doing it, I have struggles as to is it too much violence? Is it too much action? I want a lot of messaging, but even what I think might be wrong because if you just start throwing message after message after message, that's not entertaining necessarily. So there is a balance in there, and it is a struggle with me to kind of find that balance. But it's a great dance, and I think for the most part, I'm a terrible dancer, but this one I think I can do okay.
Yeah, and I just think it's so beautiful, like, in the terms of being a human vessel and then growing through your individual experience and then doing your research and understanding the depths and then like it was in Gene's journal from his, but you were able to get into the brainchild on multidimensional levels of then where you are inside as a family, very personal, and then what the fans externally feel and what they feel internally and grow through this journey like you said it was a 10-year process and really honor it and just take it to a whole new depth. I'm sure he's so proud of you for doing that. I mean, because you have the capabilities. Some people have ideas and some people journal or reflect or don't process and they do their own thing, but you took the initiatives because it's your soul, your journey, your character to do that, and then you transmute it and put it into art, and now you're like a filmmaker. You made a documentary, so I mean that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really really nice. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. um so yeah, those are some intimate stories, but maybe we'll go back to some intimate stories. But oh, I
Sure.
wanted to know, so how old were you when you saw like the first thing on the screen? Like, were you able to see it before you were 15 because like you're in the
Oh yeah.
family? Like,
Well, so I didn't really get Star Trek when I was much younger. But so I didn't watch it as a little kid, really. In fact, I thought it was too boring because Star Trek has more of a intellectual sort of tone to it. Again, I was watching Knight Rider and Starsky and Hutch, a little bit more action. But I can't say for sure this was the first time. But when I was very young, I don't know if it was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Um, my home, my father had an office, and in that office bathroom, he had a 16 millimeter. He had a projector, with the reels with film,
yeah.
and he had a little white piece of board up against the wall. And I would go in there, and my father would play the original series blooper reel. And so, in the original series blooper reel, you can usually find it on YouTube, unless CBS has kind of eliminated it. Um, it's just goofy stuff. It's the characters screwing up their lines, or going into the sliding doors and the doors don't open, or tripping downstairs, and it's just sort of that slapstick sort of stuff. But I used to sit on the floor and giggle and giggle and giggle and laugh because it was just, it was physical comedy of these characters doing this. And so my I would say that's my most precious first memory of watching Star Trek. That's that was basically my introduction to Star Trek. So
And was he in the
that's
room? Like, who was running the machine? Did you secretly do it, or like was he running it for you?
he would put the reel on, and
Okay.
he'd bring the film through the gears and everything it needed to go, and then bring it around, and then he'd play it for me, and he'd go away. But when it was done, I think sometimes I'd be like, "Oh, can I watch it again?" And he'd come in and rewind it and switch the
Oh,
reels or do whatever. And it was I don't know if it's bonding, but it's certainly a fond experience I have, and fond memory I have of being with my father.
yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned going to these like Comic Cons, these events, and everyone was dressed up. Like, was there a certain age where you would participate and dress up too, or were you not?
I I
How
think
was
the
that for
closest I've
you?
ever gotten to wearing a costume at a Star Trek convention is putting on a red shirt. And forgive me for those who don't know. There's obviously the different color shirts in the original series and next gen and beyond have a designation, and the captain generally wore sort of a gold or a yellow, and science was blue, medical science was blue, and then red was security. And I don't. Anyhow, long story short, there's something called the red shirts, and forgive me for those of you who know already. There's always this joke because every time they went down to a planet, they would bring a security officer who was wearing a red shirt, and it would be some actor that no one's heard of before, and he would go off and get killed by the aliens. And so there was this kind of ongoing joke in Star Trek where if you're wearing a red shirt, you don't come back. So anyhow, all of that is to say, I closest I've ever worn is a red shirt at a convention.
Got it.
Luckily, I've come back. So
Yeah, yeah, I got it.
yeah.
Speaking of attire, I was noticing on the podcast that y'all have, the hosts and the male, the two co-hosts, they wear the
Yes.
same color shirt.
Oh, is this mission log? We have a couple of podcasts. One of them is Mission Log, which we've been doing
No,
for,
it's
I
one
feel
out
like
of the UK.
11, 12 years.
It's
Oh, that's a brand new one.
okay.
Yes, Does It Fly is a
Yeah,
brand new one.
I
Yeah,
was I
yeah.
was noticing they color code if they're wearing burgundy or if they're wearing black. So I thought that was interesting being in that
Well,
uniform.
I have not been privy to that as a choice, but great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into fashion and styles and all that artistry, so I probably just attention to detail pick that part up.
Well,
So,
hey, not to sound like a typical guy, but you can
yeah,
see what I'm wearing. I don't. I should have dressed nicer for this, but of course, I'm just wearing my sweatshirt for the day.
no, you're great. You're great. Okay, so for I mean, I guess it depends what age you're at because you said like when you were little, like, and I remember when I was little, like the tone was just very like the tone. It was like, you're like animated when you're a kid. That's why the
Hmm.
animations are so important. But the tone was very kind of So
Hmm.
I guess depending on, let's just start with the teens who tune into the show. Like if they were able to like watch, where would they start? Like from the beginning through where is there? How should they watch and take it in and digest if they're like new fans to Star Trek?
Well, here's what's good about. Well, this is kind of a broad statement about Star Trek right now. There are, well, technically, what are there, 5 shows? There's definitely 5 shows. I can't keep up. There's at least 5 shows out right now. 2 of them are animated, um, and one is called Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks, and I would call that more adult animation,
Mm.
and young adult animation. I'd say it's on the level of Family Guy. So I'm not sure I would put an 8-year-old in front of it, depending on the maturity of that 8-year-old. But there is another one called Prodigy, and I absolutely love Prodigy. Prodigy was originally put together with Nickelodeon, and it was slated to be a kid show. It is not a kid show, meaning it is for adults and kids.
Mm.
It is appropriate for young kids. I let my son when he was 4 watch it by all means, but it is, well, maybe not 4, 6. Anyhow, it it is great sci-fi. It is great character development. It is great Star Trek messaging. What I've been talking about all through this podcast, it has that through and through. And what it really does is it is a great introduction to Star Trek. So I'd say whether you're young or old, get over your sort of, oh, I don't watch cartoons. It is a great introduction into Star Trek.
Okay.
And again, it's got a like sci-fi that's adult. It talks about wormholes. It talks about all sorts of stuff. So highly recommend everyone check out Prodigy. That is currently available on Netflix. And then Lower Decks. Here's the thing about Lower Decks. I think it's for everyone, but you're going to love it even more if you're already sort of a slight fan of Star Trek because it does a lot of references. You won't be lost. It works without knowing much, but it is for the person who hasn't seen Star Trek. It is definitely for the person who has seen Star Trek, and it's most certainly for the person who knows Star Trek good because you'll catch little things here and there, and it's pretty funny. So those are my that's my advice for Star Trek, the animated side of things.
Okay, I am so excited. Like I'm welling up because I'm just thrilled because a lot of the people who tune into the show, they're actors and they're voiceover actors. And I'm with Vox. They're like amazing. And actually, a lot of the talent from my agency have been on your animation series, on the series. I love animation. I know you said at the beginning, like people who don't like animation, like I'm a big kid. My dad loves animation.
Yeah,
He loves animation. Like, no,
I
like
do too.
when I was a kid and I was too young, then I had to go upstairs. It was like my dad was like big kid watching the Star Trek. But now, like I'm gonna binge all of them. I'm gonna binge them all. I'm gonna get back to you, but I'm gonna binge them all, and
Please.
I'm so excited. I'm really bullish on it. Near future episodes, I'll be like dropping some clues and like spreading the good word out there. So Yeah, I'm really excited that the animation part happened, because when I was looking it up, and it's like, they were censoring it, like, oh, parental guidance, and then when you're 15 that's probably like a good age, but then to open it up to a younger generation who know about it, but it's kind of like that tone, or you don't know about it, by bringing the animation and the voices and explaining it, the story, in like in a different kind of way for the
Yeah.
younger generations, or people who are new to it. So I think that's really interesting. So, and the animation series won an Emmy, which is really cool.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
No, it's spectacular. I'll be honest with you. When so there was an animation series long before this in the early '70s, and it was called Star Trek: The Animated Series. And this was done, well, like I said, early '70s, and the animation wasn't great back then. But again, I if you're interested in good storytelling, that is also great to watch because it is adult themes. It's poor animation, but adult stories. And I don't mean like kids can't watch it, but for example, it deals with the devil. And it basically has an episode that talks about the devil. But what it does in typical Star Trek fashion is that you learn about it and you find out, not to give too much away, that the devil is really just this life form that's misunderstood. And that is how our lore of the devil came to be. I mean, Star Trek kind of does that thing where it kind of brings up these adult topics and kind of connects them back to our reality. But it, again, it dealt with communication. It dealt with misunderstanding this life form that might have caused some mischief here and there. But and then in the end, you have some empathy for that character of the devil, and you understand it. And once you understand it, it's no longer something to fear.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's fear. And in the 70s, obviously, we were in a totally different place, and people got paralyzed, and they were brainwashed, and the religions and what they were taught, and it was evil, and don't go there, which created a divide in the world instead of being a whole and understanding it. But I think,
Oh
like,
yeah.
now, in 2024, we're in a different place completely, and the communication is different. So is, going where people go to congregate. So and making one with it, and under, like you said, it's misunderstood. Just like us as humans, we're misunderstood. We can't judge a book by its cover, but through storytelling, different various ways of storytelling, and there's different stories
Hmm.
about saints and goddesses, and I'm Greek, so there's the Greek mythology, and there's different gods and stories. So it's like there's different interpretations of the devil, but there are so many people who's like, they'll just go like that because their like shield comes up, because that's what they were talking. They don't want to go there, but
That's what they were taught. That's all they kind of know in a way. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. Go
that's
ahead.
like, we want to experience the full of life and what it has to offer. So like Khalil Gibran, and the podcast, the people on the podcast, the Fly one, they were talking about poetry, like poetry and the language, and the communication style. And I grew up, studying Shakespeare. It's like it's such a beautiful topic to, Khalil Gibran on joy and sorrow. Like you wake up on one side of the bed and everything's great, and then you wake up on the other side of the bed and everything's miserable. And like, how do you know the brightest rainbow of them all if you haven't seen like the gloom and doom? So it's like understanding, the dichotomy is really important and educational. And
Absolutely.
but sometimes when you see it through TV and storytelling, it's passive, and some people like could take it in the ways, and then some people it just like bypasses them. They don't even like get it.
Sure,
But
sure.
you
And
know,
don't get me wrong, passive TV, entertainment for the sake of entertainment, I'm not against that. I just, when
yeah,
for me, I'm very specific with Star Trek. So I don't
yeah.
want to be so high on my horse and say, if you're not watching intelligent TV, you're whatever. Trust me, I watch tons of crap out there. Sometimes you just want to turn off your brain, distract yourself from whatever you've had to do that day. In fact, I would say just about every night I'm like that, and watch something that is meaningless, completely fluff, meaningless.
Mm,
I would say just about every night I tune into something for a bit on that.
mm. Yeah, not me. I write poetry.
That's
Uh,
beautiful. That's
I'm not
beautiful.
really like watching shows like a lot of people, but I'm sensitive, and I create a lot of art, and I make
That's
music,
beautiful.
so that's kind of my tuning out kind of thing. But thank you so much for sharing everything. I'm so grateful.
Oh yeah,
Would love to pivot into the Roddenberry Foundation, with the
sure.
global impact and when it was started, what it means for you, and just just some alpha on the foundation?
We started back in 2010, so I guess we're on year 14-ish now. Um, it really started because as much as you've called me a producer, and yes, I share the title executive producer, and that I I am not. I don't consider myself a filmmaker. I don't consider myself a experienced Hollywood producer. I'm involved in these shows. I'm involved in meetings. We share input and content and ideas. But I am not. It is not my drive to create shows. But again, believing in Star Trek, believing in the messaging, believing in humanity really bettering itself, we started this foundation on the ethics and philosophy of Star Trek. And so it is to find organizations and individuals, institutions out there that are working towards the long-term advancement of our species. People who are saying, let's not do band-aid solutions. Let's find cures. Let's go to the systemic root cause of the issue. And even though we are one foundation and we are certainly far from the biggest, we can make a small dent. But what we're also trying to do is there's a lot of redundancy out there. So we're trying to find other groups, philanthropy groups, foundations that we can team up with. And they can approach an issue from this side and we from this side. And so hopefully we can have a larger impact. Because we do realize a lot of these issues are just so enormous. And I hate to say it. I mean, I really do. Money does make a difference. No, I'm not saying throw money at a problem, but I'm saying in order for diseases to be researched, in order for methodologies to be developed, you've got dedicated people who are working and thinking about it and need the money for either the equipment or the facilities or just to put food on the table to find solutions to this. And so we support that.
Yeah.
We find the people out there that are working towards that long-term advancement of our species. And
I,
so I'm,
I
I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, congratulations. And I'm totally connected. Shared with you a moment ago. My friend's doing something super epic. I'll send you all the information later, but I
Hmm.
sent him the website to say, hey, maybe you want to apply for this grant. It sounds like something that you're doing. And I will continue to be a healthy communicator, and get more involved as much as I can with who I am and what I'm doing and with my communities, because I feel like I'm a conduit for those areas and they, on a global impact, I feel like it's why we're here. And people have different titles. Like some people want the money, some people want the mission, some people want the connectivity, the human connection for humanity. So everyone's in it for different reasons. And so, like you said, it could be like a corporation, but it could also be an individual who wants to get involved and make an impact. And that's really important. And, you said the basic of just like food, like people really essentially are minimalists and we have good nature. We have great oxygen. We have like good foods that we're putting in our temples and then having collective minds, like these nodes, with these codes and these nodes and, having like the scientists and these best people who are the educators to really, lead the way. We don't with the technology nowadays, we don't need like these owning a whole block or having these huge offices and fancy things, like we can really on a minimal level like get a lot accomplished. That's a new
Oh,
that's
here,
that's a
I'll do
new
this one instead. There you go. There we go. Oh
ah!
God. Okay.
Oh my god, I've never
All
seen
these
that
all these
one.
weird features. I don't really forgive
it,
me.
it's new. I love that. It's the first time I've seen that one. But
Yes.
I just love the simplicity of it with the technology and the evolution. So it's like going back to Gene's journal and being a kid and just having a vision and just having an idea and just like and keeping that alive, right? And just that simplicity. And then, with the simplicity of the foundation and yeah, there's a lot of integral parts along the way. But we go back to basics, things are very simplistic in execution, right? So yeah, I will have everything in the show notes so people can tune in, follow you, learn more. But any social media handles or websites that you do want to say while we're here?
I mean, just I guess I don't do a lot on social media. but Roddenberry at Roddenberry is certainly the company one, and you can learn all about the stuff there. What I want to do is we have a great podcast called Mission Log as well. One of the journeys for me for Star Trek has been, as I said, I met these fans who told me how Star Trek inspired them, and then about I don't know 14 years ago now, I can't remember how long it's been. We decided, what I decided to do is find two incredible hosts to go through each episode in chronological order and find out the morals, meanings, and messages, because that's what everyone told me. Star Trek had meaning. There was something of value. And what they do is they take an episode and they summarize it. They give a little trivia and history about it. They poke some fun at some of the behind the scenes stuff, but then they dig deep into what the episode was about and its relevance in the 60s, perhaps, when it was, or whenever it aired. And then, is that still a message today? And what are the different interpretations? And you can go back to the original series and you can even see plenty of sexism in the show. And so you kind of look at that and they look at it, and then they have a discussion about, there's two points of view. Well, it's okay because back then that was more accepted. Or no, it's not okay. It was never okay to do that sort of stuff. No, they're not there to destroy or trash the episode of Star Trek, but they're there to pick out things and point it out and really dissect it. And I find these episodes that we do for this podcast a great thing to listen to after you've watched an episode, because every time I listen to it, I hear things that I never realized in the episode I just watched. And so, I mean, I highly recommend people check out Mission Log by all means.
I will have. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I say Roddenberry.com is our website, and listen, I'm at Eugene Roddenberry official. We're trying to get rid of the official, but that's been a bit of a challenge with Instagram. If you really want to know anything that I'm doing, I kind of post it there. That's where this is streaming right now. I do have a Facebook page, which, to be honest, is it Eugene Roddenberry? I don't know. If you search for Roddenberry, it'll be in there somewhere.
Yeah. I went. I liked. It'll be in the show notes because I'll have all the links and the link tree, and it takes you right to the social media. So it's like one click away. Layer 2 with all the social media accounts. Woo!
Great.
It's like a whole nother thing. I mean, decentralization and AI and blockchain and Web3 is like a whole nother podcast.
Oh yeah. AI's that's an exciting topic.
I know. Well, I know we'll have you back on in the near future. It would, be my complete honor, because I definitely know you have exciting things in the works that we're not talking about now, but we'll be able to discuss later on.
Well, I do want to talk about one more thing really quickly, if that's okay.
Oh no, we're here for you. We're here. We're not going anywhere.
There's a project that I've been working on. Well, I mean, technically, I've been working on it for I'm sure way over 10 years. Called the Roddenberry Archive. And it started, my parents kept a lot of documentation from Star Trek, call sheets, scripts, models, concept art, all sorts of things. And it's always been sort of in our home archive or our office archive. I decided to start scanning those years ago. And so we started by scanning paper documents. Well, one of my best friends, Julian Urbach, he is the creator and runs Otoy, decided to help me take this to the next level.
What is it called?
So his company is called Otoy. What you should be looking for is Roddenberry Archive, and I believe it's roddenberry.io. We'll put it in the show notes.
1,000.
But if you look up the Roddenberry Archive, they're archiving everything, models, everything digitally. Physical models are scanning, models of ships. What he has also done is he has incredible artists from all around the world rendering life-size versions of every ship in the Star Trek universe. And right now, go to the link that we will have in the show notes. You can go and walk around the bridge of, I think there's like 15 different Enterprises, because the Enterprise changed slightly from season to season, and of course from show to show and movie to movie. They've got Deep Space Nine. They've got the new ships from the new shows. You can go in there, and if you have a Apple Vision, I know not many people have that, you can actually have a full immersive experience and walk around these ships. And there's so much more you can see in this archive. It is the future in the sense that anything that you want to know or learn about Star Trek will eventually be here. You want to learn how it was shot. You want to see clips of behind the scenes. You want to get some blueprints of how stages were done. It'll all be there. And right now, it's got a ton there to keep you busy. But if anyone is curious about the behind the scenes of Star Trek, go check out the Roddenberry Archive.
I love that. We need to talk more offline. Oh yeah, my brother has one. My mom came to California, the whole family for Thanksgiving. She had one on for the first time. I recorded her. It was the cutest thing. A lot of my friends who do VR, augmented reality, they have and they're like in the Web3 community. So like people are really bullish on like everything you're saying. My mind's just like because everything's like digital, everything's like going digital and like on chain. So this is so exciting, and it's like in like Web3 they call it like Easter eggs where there's like a hunt. So to gamify it and with the digital things and it, you like make it like this whole strategy. I mean, I'm my brain's just going, but I'm so excited to see what you and the team do with it and just be supporting it 1000%. How neat. That is so exciting.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting. It's cool to see the future happening now.
Yes, and be a part of it. Wow.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's massive. It's like the whole world's literally your oyster because like you're so young and you're so in it with passion, and you listen to the people. And that's it. You know, you listen to the fans. You listen to what they want. You know, and I was thinking before we got on, I was like, what is one of the most things that you hear from the fans all the time? What are like the number like one, two, three? It's like always. It's like it's a script that you always hear that like it's the most meaningful to them.
So that is a great question.
Really? Okay.
Well, because I don't know if I can think of like the one thing that stands out. I mean, when I go to these conventions, and at these conventions, I've been going for long enough that people do know me. But luckily, I'm just one of them because I don't disappear behind any curtain. I walk around and I interact with everyone and I hang out with people. And I don't, I can't tell you the one. I mean, right now there's so much different Star Trek out there that everyone is kind of coming at it from a different angle. I mean, the one thing that I hear, as I already mentioned, is how it inspires them. It's more than just a TV show. This is not just about like, oh my God, I want an actor's autograph because I like their character because it made them laugh. Star Trek means something to me. It has impacted my life in either a small way or a large way. And because of that, I'm here to to be a part of this convention and to hopefully learn more about Star Trek because of how important it is to me. It's an important show to a lot of people. It's
Mm.
not just entertainment, and so if there's any one thing, that is the one thing.
Mhm.
Star Trek is important, and it has a responsibility.
I'll need to get your schedule of the Comic-Con shows that you're going to because honestly, the one in San Diego, I almost went twice. I haven't been yet. There's one in Michigan. I haven't been yet. My cousin goes cuz he's an animator, well, on the TV show Archer that just ended, but he was a lead animator on that. So he goes with his booth and sets up and stuff, but like I
Mhm.
still haven't been and I'm a voiceover actor, but I
They're
really
a
want
lot
to
of fun.
go. And so
Yeah,
I need to find out your schedule so I can come like
sure.
support you, and I will dress up as one of the characters. Like I've
Okay,
never done that, like the cosplay. I will 1000% do that. I'm like, and I'll maybe
perfect.
bring some friends.
That'd be great. That'd be absolutely great.
Yeah, yeah. And then maybe if there's one in Michigan, I'll bring my niece and nephew. That'd be really cool too.
Awesome. Is that where you're from, Michigan? Is that where
I'm
you
from
are?
yeah, my family's Greek. I'm from Michigan, and yeah, I'm visiting family right now. So
Oh,
um,
wonderful. What part of Michigan? I don't know it well, but I was just there. But I was in,
oh
I was about an hour and a half out of Detroit, but I don't, yeah, whatever.
yeah,
I
like
think I was there. No, I don't know where.
it's in the suburbs, like Novi,
Okay.
between Ann Arbor and Detroit. So there's
Okay. I'm not
Novi.
asking for your personal information so that everyone listening can get it, but
I know, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. But it's in the suburbs, but it's between Ann Arbor and Detroit. So like
gotcha.
30
Gotcha.
minutes each way. But wait, where were you in Michigan?
I can't remember the town. I was there to pick up a vehicle. So,
Okay.
and I did a road trip back to California.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know the next time you're coming to Michigan, but my yaya, she will make you some authentic Greek food.
That sounds amazing. I have no problem with food.
Yeah.
Uh, one of my many vices.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we didn't get to really talk about your diving experience much, but you're an avid diver, and so you go around the world. And where's one or two of your favorite, most memorable places to dive?
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've been in the water, but I do need to get back in. I was a voracious diver. I anytime I wasn't working, I was either diving or planning a place to go diving. You know, I have to say that the South Pacific, and I include everything from Hawaii to Australia, including Hawaii and Australia, as the South Pacific. Anything in there has always been incredible. If I narrow it down, Chuk, Palau, Ponape, Micronesia was really one of the places that I've been to a number of times, and I absolutely loved diving there. Now, I haven't been everywhere, of course, so I'm sure there are plenty of other gorgeous places. I really just kind of love it. Australia is incredible. I've been to Papua New Guinea. There's just Solomon Islands. Every experience is different and magical in its own way. What the only way I can explain diving to someone is it truly is like being in space. It truly is like visiting another alien planet. You have to wear equipment to keep yourself alive.
Yeah.
You are now the fish out of water, so to speak. You are the foreign object in a world that is inhabited by alien life forms that thrive in that environment. You are the one that has to adapt. And there's something very exciting. And I'm not just talking about thrill seeking, there's something about discovery and adventure and being the only person. Now, there's plenty of people who dive around the world, but the only person in that area. And again, you're seeing alien life. It is the closest thing to being on another planet, meeting alien life, than anything else on this world. And that's one of the reasons I love it so much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. One time I went diving in St. Lucia, but I wasn't very good at it.
Everything takes training and comfort. And by the way, it is really just about comfort. It's important you get the right training, of course,
Yeah.
and then it's important you just be comfortable.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't push it.
Yeah.
Do it to the point you're comfortable. Start in a pool, get your skills down, and then it's as dangerous as driving a car. If you don't pay attention, if you blindfold yourself and drive on a curvy road, you're going to crash and die. If you don't look at your gas tank, you're going to run out of fuel. But as you drive, this becomes second nature. And now we're all very comfortable with diving. Not to say accidents don't happen, certainly they do. But diving becomes like that. You pay attention, you know your gear, you know your routine, you're cautious, and then you plan redundancy, and you have a buddy to make sure they're checking you out. Chances are nothing will go wrong.
Yeah. Lastly, I think it really like circles me back around to like diving's your passion and it's something that you like to do. So you create that space. But in the beginning of the conversation, you were talking about the philosophy of Star Trek. And then
Hmm.
you gave a beautiful philosophy. And then I was saying, like, what are one or two steps that people can do to implement that? Because it's hard for people to give themselves that gift. Well, they'll do everything for everyone or they're distracted instead of focusing on their own goals and intentions. But it's like, maybe finding something like diving, whatever that principle is for them, finding a passion
Hmm.
where they can be out of their mind and out of like whatever they're thinking and passively by enjoying going on a bike ride or traveling or just
Hmm. Hmm.
hugging a tree or just doing something that they love to do will give that space for that play and creativity to be able to have a dreamlike state like your father did when he created the Gene's journal and to take note and to write it down, and you never know how that's going to be. So personally, when
Yeah,
I was a kid, my first poem was called The Oddball, and I was the oddball. I felt odd,
that's great.
but I
That's
have these
great.
pieces, And I'm like, one day my grandkids are going to read these, or one day, like, maybe I'll put them into a song. And you never know. So it's like, you never know. Like, when your dad, before you were even born, he was writing in his journal these things about aliens. And look what it turned
Yeah.
out to be. And it's like, so whoever's listening, whoever's tuning in, like a 13-year-old or a 20-year-old or whoever is tuning in, it's never too late to, create space to follow our own dreams and to listen to that intuition of something that brings us joy. Like, it doesn't have to be so heavy or lighthearted. It can just be something that's like fun that you like doing, being in water, right?
Very well said, very well delivered. I'm not religious, I'm not very spiritual, but I would say the way you describe that is perfect. It is my underwater. Being underwater is my spirituality. That is where I can focus on that moment, what's going on in front of me in my own mind. I'm not distracted by phone calls or work or anything else. That is as centered as I think I ever get in those moments. And so again, I'm not spiritual, I'm not religious. You don't have to be. But
Yeah.
if you find that thing for you, describe it however you want. But if it's a way to bring you peace, calm, and beauty, then yeah, do it to your heart's content.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah,
I look
thank you.
forward. I look forward to seeing you soon in California, and I look forward to having you back on the show later on to
Yes.
talk about all the goodies that are coming up with the Star Trek legacy. And I honor you. Thank you. And
Oh,
yeah,
likewise. Thank you.
we'll roll it out. Thank you so much for tuning in to She's All Over the Place. Because of you, we're in the top 2% out of all known podcasts. And you have just witnessed and experienced an amazing episode with the gentleman, Eugene Roddenberry Jr., who is carrying on his father's legacy of Star Trek. So tune in, look at the show notes, share this with other Star Trek lovers, tune into the animations, and tune into all the projects. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Over and out.
Live long and prosper, everyone.